fabulous Donna Price, who is running for the 55th District. I had a fabulous conversation with Donna Price on Wednesday, as did Keith, as did Quentin. Quentin Beckham's in the house. He's looking quite dapper in this shirt. I love it. Look at the accents on the cuffs. Once the cameras go live, people will see this.
And the collar too.
I know, he looks good.
I feel inadequate.
Keith.
The more they do this, the more I think I usually look like crap.
Keith, that's not true. That's not true. Keith Smith has assembled the panel. We'll start the show, guys, in a matter of moments. Give the show a like and a share. This is your opportunity to get to know a candidate running for the 55th who we think the world of here at the I Love CVille Network and Real Talk. Judah Wickower is our fabulous director. Quentin, you feeling pretty good over there?
I am feeling good. The coffee's starting to kick in. We're happy this morning.
Yeah,
it's a Friday. What's not to like?
Donna Price, you feeling good?
Feeling good.
Good. We're going to have fun. Judah Wickower, we're in your hands, my friend. Guys, good Friday morning. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us. We are live in Charlottesville, across Albemarle County, Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world, on the I Love CVille Network. We're presented today by Keller Williams Alliance. Should I say it again? I think I should. Keller Williams Alliance and Yes Realty Partners. We may or may not have the principal of Keller Williams Alliance on set, and one of the partners of Yes Realty Partners as well, and Keith Smith. Folks, so much to cover on today's show as we, for the first time, introduce you on the I Love CVille Network to Donna Price.
Drum roll,
Cannot
please.
wait for you guys to meet this lady who's running for the 55th District. She is just dynamic. Judah Wickower is our director. 10 years we've worked alongside each other. I call it a love-hate relationship. I love him. Sometimes I'm not sure the feeling is mutual, but he is a great guy, and he is my brother from another mother.
Oh man, you got a total
I know.
total eye roll
We've
over
talked
there.
about the eye roll so many times, haven't we, Judah? Let's go to the studio camera and let's welcome our panel. Folks, Keith Smith, you know, que pasa, amigo?
¿Qué pasa, amigo?
How are you?
I am doing good. Thank you for asking. You know, I can't think of a better panel to spend a Friday morning on. And I can't wait to get in and chat and talk. You know, we know all each other socially, professionally. So I'm looking forward to talk to Donna and talk about all the great stuff Donna's got in between those two voting ears with earrings.
I know, we should put those on screen. Can we go to the one
highlight
shot on Donna Price? She's got the best earrings ever. It says vote on there. I love them.
And you would get to wear them all the time in Virginia.
I know, you said that. It's so true. It is
Yep.
so true. Before we go any further, I think we all should welcome or say happy birthday to Neil Williamson.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love Neil.
I think he's watching. Why don't we say a happy birthday
Yeah,
to
we're
Neil?
gonna find out where he's watching from. He sent me a picture with palm trees.
It looked like the Outer Banks. Was it not?
No, that was a palm tree. So that's further south. I know it wasn't out west because when we texted, it was still dark out west. But
Well, don't underestimate Neil.
no, but I understand that. But the picture,
The
had
geography.
the sunrise coming up.
The geography.
The
So
geography. Thank you, Donna. for
Happy
keeping me-
birthday, Neil Williamson, guys. Quentin Beckham, you know him as the principal of Keller Williams. And Donna Price, chairwoman, Albemarle County Board of Supervisors, 55th District candidate. Why don't we start with Donna? Introduce yourself to everybody that's watching the show.
All right, thank you, Jerry. It's great to be here. Keith, Quentin, good to see y'all. And welcome, good morning, Central Virginia. I'm Donna Price, born in Louisiana, grew up in Georgia, spent 25 years in the Navy and the Judge Advocate General's Corps, which gave me an opportunity to live, travel, and see the world and the United States. And those experiences have really affected how I see the world. In addition to my military service as a prosecutor, defense counsel, criminal judge, commanding officer of the largest legal office in the Department of the Navy, I worked with Congress for 2 years where I was responsible for all medical and personnel issues affecting the Department of the Navy. I've been a corporate counsel for a defense contractor, senior vice president for a healthcare company. Most recently elected to the Board of Supervisors, and this year I've been very blessed to serve as the chair of the Board of Supervisors. In December, when the Supreme Court of Virginia announced the new districts as a result of the 2020 census, and I saw that the new House of Delegates 55th District was finally going to be competitive again after Albemarle County had been gerrymandered into 4 districts 10 years before. I knew that that was where I needed to go next. Public service is really what motivates me, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity, hopefully, to go to Richmond and be able to do some things at the state level that we're just not authorized to do at the county level.
You know what? Should we do this?
There you
Donna
go.
Price.
Well done, Donna. That sounds like a sizzle reel
Oh my
to me.
goodness gracious. Cut that into a highlight reel, please, and let's play it. Jim Hingley highlighted the gerrymandered nature of the district and how it's not so much so now. Jim Hingley also was sitting in Keith's seat the other day and announced his campaign for re-election as Commonwealth's attorney in Albemarle County. So I'll get out of the way. Keith, we talk about candidates all the time. This is one of the most dynamic ones in our footprint.
Well, I read the bio, and I know Donna well. I read the bio, and I may or may not have retained all of that, but listening to what
You read?
yeah, I know. It's amazing. Yeah.
Did she use a lot of small words?
No, it has pictures. Oh. It has pictures. So we were saying before the show came live, today I forgot to put my Marine Corps pin on, and that may have been because I've had a judge sitting across the table from me, and I might have to.
Thank you for your service, Keith.
Thank you. Ditto. Back at you. So, look, let's talk. The those who don't quite have not heard or up to speed like us folks at this table, talk about how the 55th was created, a little bit how the path came along, a little bit about the gerrymandering from your perspective, and then we'll just see where the conversation goes.
All right, thanks. Well, back, every 10 years we do a census. And after the census is completed, then you take those figures, that data, and you divide the country up into both House of Representative districts as well as each state. If they have a bicameral legislature, as we do with the Senate and a House of Representatives, which we call the House of Delegates, then you have to apportion your population. And after the 2010 census, the Republicans really had the control of the redistricting process, and Albemarle County was divided up into 4 different House of Delegates districts. And that really watered down the voice of an intact community, an intact county. And if you followed, we recently had a constitutional amendment that changed the redistricting process, which unfortunately, due to severe partisanship, was a failure. So the process went to the Supreme Court of Virginia, and at the end of December, they announced the new the House of Delegates districts. And Albemarle County now is divided into 2 districts. The city of Charlottesville, with part of what we call the urban ring of Albemarle County, is the 54th district, very ably represented by Sally Hudson. And the rest of Albemarle County, the northern half of Nelson and the western third of Louisa counties, are now the new 55th district. And that is an extremely fair, very competitive. It's no guaranteed win to a Republican or a Democrat, which is as it should be. The voters should choose their representatives. The representatives should not choose their voters.
We talk about this on the show all the time, and a shout out to Neil Williamson on his birthday today. Elections matter. Competitive elections really matter, and I'm glad to hear that there'll be a competitive election. There'll be some other folks running against you. Do you know who they are at the moment?
Oh, we do. We know one.
Well, Kellen Squire is one who's running. I expect that there may be 1 or 2 more who will step into the ring. And I want to go back to the importance of there not being gerrymandered districts. And that applies to both Republicans and Democrats. Now, I'm a Democrat, okay? But there are places in this country where a party in power has so manufactured the districts that voters are in that even though they may have a minority total vote of the population, they come out with a massive majority of elected representatives. And that is not representative government. Representative government is one person, one vote, as close as possible, so that the numbers, Keith, if you've got 100,000 people in your district, and Quentin, you've got 100,000 in yours, and me and Jerry, we all have an equal voice in the say of government. Fair and equitable. That's exactly it, Keith.
And I think you made a good point about districts and elections being really competitive. Because when they are really competitive, it brings a lot of issues to the surface. It allows some really good dialogue between the candidates. and I think we end up with a better informed public.
Absolutely, and it avoids extremism. And the problem when you have...
Yeah, on either side.
On either side.
Yeah.
And again, either side. I am for fairness and justice, equity.
Well, as a
And-
judge, I'm sure that that's what you're bringing to the table.
Thank you. I would like to believe that is the case.
I know it's the case.
Well, thank you.
So running for the 55th, talk to us about the inspiration of why you made this push.
Well, public service has always been what motivates me. Carl Jung, Albert Einstein, all the way back to Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, they talk about the philosophy of service. And I've really always lived by the mantra that the only life worth living is a life of service to others. That's why I spent 25 years in the Navy. It's why I ran for office here. I was asked to run for the Board of Supervisors, and that meant a lot to me that people came and asked me to do it. But, you know, we live in what's called a Dillon Rule state, and there's a difference between Dillon Rule and Home Rule. In the Navy, it was the difference of the philosophy between Westpac and Lant Fleet. Westpac was you can do anything you want unless they tell you you can't. Lant Fleet was you don't do anything unless they tell you you can. Well, in a Dillon Rule state, counties can only do what state government allows them to do.
So give examples of that, Donna, real-world examples of that
Well,
that affects everybody.
Well, right now, for example, the county just approved a meals tax increase. We are required by state law to have a flat percentage amount. It does not matter how much you are spending at the restaurant, you're going to pay the same percentage. That actually ends up being regressive against people with a lower income. So what I would like, and I've actually talked to a couple of people just the other night, I mentioned it to Sina McGill, what I would like to see is a progressive meals tax. If you go out to eat, you pick up food to come home, and I'm just going to use rough figures, and if it's under $100, you pay 4%. If it's $100 to $200, you pay 6%. Because people who have limited income are not going out to restaurants and spending hundreds of dollars on meals.
It's sort of the tax version of inflation that we're seeing. Who does it affect the most?
Exactly.
Yes.
And everything should be that way. But at the county level, we can't do that. We can have a tax, but it has to be a flat amount, a flat percentage, regardless of what is spent. The same thing applies to property taxes. I would like to see where our property taxes are that the less valuable houses pay a lower percent of income of property tax than those who have the wealthier, the larger, whether it be a bigger home or a bigger piece of property. Again, because what's happening is if you have a flat percentage across all spectrums, those with the least amount are having to pay a higher percentage of their income. And I believe that those of us who have I was raised in a life of privilege. You know, white, intact family. I'm transgender, I was identified male at birth, but I had all of the advantages that go from those privileges. But you take other families that are dealing with generational poverty, and they don't have those privileges. So what we need to do is recognize that those at the bottom need more assistance, those at the top can afford to pay more. Our income tax is that way. Why shouldn't we do that with the other taxes? But we can't do those things at the county level. That is something that has to come from the state level. Some of those may require constitutional amendments, by the way,
For the state.
at the state level.
When you
And-
say constitution, we're just going to make sure
Right,
we're not
at the state
talking
level.
about
I'm not
federal.
talking about federal. At the state level. And that's another thing that's important for people to recognize. I mean, I am the champion of the underdog. Equity, inclusion, civil justice, social justice, equal rights are very important to me. And those rights need to be enshrined in constitutional provisions, not merely a statutory enactment, because a statutory enactment is only as good as the next election. All it takes is a different party to come into power, a different group, and the statutes can be changed literally overnight. But constitutional protections, they are much more enshrined in our life.
Much more difficult to change.
Yes.
The birthday boy, Neil Williamson,
Oh.
just
Where
chimed
is he?
in.
Hey,
Neil
happy
Williamson,
birthday,
where-
Neil.
Where are you watching, Neil Williamson? We love your event at Three Notch with the Free Enterprise Forum. So you got voters asking you questions.
Okay, let's
so
answer.
this is from Kevin Higgins, who's in Greenwood,
All right.
Albemarle County.
Good morning, Kevin.
He says, what advantages do you see to the new 55th, whether you win or not? Good question right there.
Absolutely. And the important thing is that for the first time in over a decade, the voters of this part of Virginia will actually have a collective voice. And whether that's me, another Democrat who runs, a Republican, we will know that for the first time in a decade, the voters of Albemarle County and a little bit of Nelson and Louisa will have their voices heard collectively, not divided up. You know, united we stand, divided we fall. So that's a great question, and I think the voters of this district will be much, much happier and hopefully more excited about this campaign because it will be their voices being heard in Richmond.
So you have, when we talk about taxes, that feels like a hard push when you're talking about how taxes work. Are there issues that you think are shorter term, faster fixes that you would like to bring up to the district level that you can't address at the county level?
You know, there's so many things that we really need to work on. But, we deal mostly at the county level with land use issues, zoning, development, environmental. We also deal with schools. And I think there are some things, improvements that need to be made. As a supervisor, I'm very cautious and careful in that I don't play in other people's pool. So I will not talk about, as a supervisor, I won't talk about the city of Charlottesville, the Albemarle County School Board, the town of Scottsville, because those are different elected bodies. But now that I'm an announced candidate for a higher office, last night the Albemarle County School Board voted against collective bargaining for their employees.
Saw that.
I support collective bargaining. I don't know the details of why the decision was made last night. I saw a little bit of the news where there was some concern about whether the statute, as it was enacted, provided sufficient guidance and everything. But, Upton Sinclair's book, The Jungle, dramatically affected my life about the meatpacking industry in Chicago. And while local government is not the meatpacking industry, I've always believed that if you really want to have a fair market, you have to have a voice at the table. And that means I support collective bargaining. Now, I come from the military, and Keith will appreciate this, where collective bargaining is called mutiny. And so there are some groups where I don't necessarily support collective bargaining, and there are some groups where I support collective bargaining, but not necessarily the right to strike. When you go into private industry, strike should be part of your rights. When you work for the government, I don't believe you should be able to strike. Without ground support, there's no air support. So you have to have everybody doing their job. And also in government, you have protections you don't have in private industry. So one of the things I would like to see is some expansion and clarification of the rights to collective bargaining.
So I got out as a staff sergeant. What rank did you get out of?
I retired as a Navy captain.
So a colonel in the Marine Corps. So that's probably why I left my Marine Corps pin home, because I was seriously outranked.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant.
And here, but NCOs run the show, right?
We know that.
We know non-commissioned officers run the show.
And Keith, that's a great point. If anyone's been following the war in Ukraine, the Russians have lost near a dozen generals, and the reason is because they don't have a non-commissioned corps.
Yeah.
And so they're having to put their generals on the front line, whereas in the U.S. military, the strongest and best military in the world, we have great leadership at all levels.
So as you know, and folks who watch the show know, I've spent almost over half a decade in the Soviet Union behind us. So I've seen that stuff firsthand, and you're 100% right. They're in the Marine Corps, it's always been treated this way, that, rank, for the most part, mattered, but in the real world, the private and the staff sergeant picks that up and they go. They make their decisions and they take care of it. I want to go a little bit backwards here real quick, because this is a real estate show, right? And we were talking about the Dillon rule. So I'll leave specifics out and I'll try to make it pretty simple. Have not your county, but a surrounding county, that there is a project, because there was lack of clarity from the state level, that one individual at the county level made a decision that is going to cost a project, after it was rezoned, after site plan was approved, an extra $500,000, which now just made every single one of the new construction units that they're going to build there that expensive. So we talk about this all the time, trying to figure out a way to get housing affordability to work. And one way could be, I believe, is to turn this red tape into green tape. So the issue that was before us, or before this particular circumstances, this one individual said, well, there's no rule that says I can't do this, I'm doing it. It's the opposite of what you were saying, right? Your hands were held, or possibly held by state regulation because of a lack of clarity at the state side. These homes are going to be $10,000 to $15,000 more expensive. And that's not helping housing affordability.
No.
The average, nationwide, the average cost for new construction, what I call red tape, is around 25%. So every $400,000, $100,000 of that. Now, this stuff is necessary, but we've got to figure out a way to make that $100,000, $50,000, so we can get homes a little bit more cost effective. So that was a little bit of a soapbox on me.
No.
I just wanted to kind of throw that out
Yeah, I
there.
really do appreciate that. When I was the senior vice president for a healthcare company, we were bidding on a $5 billion military TRICARE contract with an option for another 5 years for another $5 billion, $10 billion contract.
That's a lot of zeros.
It's a lot of zeros.
That's a lot of zeros.
It was basically the 13 southern states of, well, back then when TRICARE had 3 regions. But let me tell you what struck with me in that process. The government did the initial request for bids, request for proposals. And then after the 5 companies had been working on it for a while, they said, we need to change that, and they did it again. And then they said, we still didn't get it right, we need to do it again. They ended up doing it 3 different times. The bid process took 2 years. I am precluded from telling you how much our company invested in the bid, but it was well into 8 digits, and the government was oblivious to this. They had no concept of the cost that was being put upon people who were trying to do their job. So one of the things that we at whatever level of government, county, state, federal, what we need to do is have consultation with business professionals to point out to us exactly these sort of things. Just the other day, actually, I was talking with Neil, and we were talking about these pro formas that a developer will come up with as they're getting ready to submit an application. And I went back to county staff and I said, do we have any expertise on county staff that can look into the finances of these pro formas to understand the reality of what's being proposed? And the answer was, well, not really. We've got smart people at county staff, don't get me wrong, but they don't have that expertise. So I said, we need to look at hiring consultants when these proposals come in to be able to give the business side analysis, so we're not just looking at it from either an academic or a governmental standpoint, but we're also appreciating it from the business standpoint. We don't need to hire a full-time employee for that, but we need to make sure that we get the objective, the impartial analysis for the county to be able to better evaluate. So I totally agree with what you're saying.
I've been a supporter of what you just said for about 3.5 decades, because one of the things you hear from, particularly on the land use side of things, we don't have the staff to do this, or we don't have
Institutional memory.
we don't have. Thank you. We don't have the institutional memory for that. And I think we just had a conversation about decreasing the cost, but in the rezoning application, even if the developer or the applicant pays for that, right? And you say, okay, in order for this to happen, you need to hire this consultant to do that. But let's be honest, when you get behind the dais and people come up to the podium, the NIMBY folks that don't want it anyway are not going to believe that came from a consultant on the end of it. But
Yeah, but that's what we get paid the big bucks
there you go.
to do.
There you go. How much is that big buck?
Is it 16,800?
It's around 17 right now. We are
Yeah.
looking to increase it.
Hold it. I bought coffee and you get paid that much money?
I know. Every year.
Oh my God.
Without fail.
No, but that is what governance is about.
Yeah.
It's about listening to all sides. It's objectively taking into consideration, recognizing the difference between a NIMBY versus what is
NIMBY.
best for not just the community, the neighborhood, the district, the county, but what we do in Albemarle County affects our neighboring counties. It affects Central Virginia. And that's literally, we joke about it, but that's what we get paid to do, is to make those decisions.
And back to housing, we're talking about taxes and how they disproportionately affect people based on where you're at on the economic scale. I think housing's the same way. as we continue to push up prices, as it takes longer to put doors out, as we stretch out the time from permit to key, while all of that is happening, we're slowly pushing the middle class down lower and lower. And every strong economy, whether local or statewide,
Middle class.
requires a strong middle
Strong middle
class.
class.
And so I'm really interested. I would love to see you move up to the other level, but I also know that most of this is dealt with at the local level in terms of things we were just talking about.
Well, all politics are local, except in the state of Virginia when the Dillon Rule says you can't do this. But Jerry's got, I think we got some questions maybe you might want to.
We have voter questions
Okay.
coming in.
Okay.
And I want to, Gwendolyn, I'm going to get to your question here. She's a voter. She's watching in Holland right now, but she's a voter in your
Ooh, she's
district.
back at home.
So before I get to Gwendolyn, I want to get to your announcement post, which I found just absolutely dynamic and just so well written and so clear of thought and concise and just this is why I'm doing it. You put it on Facebook for everyone to see. It was absolutely on point. One of the items you referenced in that announcement was you felt a little, I don't know if handcuffed is the right word, on the board.
No, not handcuffed, no, it was just that limitation on, because of the Dillon Rule.
Yeah.
On the things that we can do. And Jerry, thank you for that. You know, I've known, actually, since I got elected as the supervisor, I had not planned on running for reelection. But there was a need, I was approached, and I was more than willing to step up and serve to fill that need. But I really have been interested in the state level. And so when the redistricting came out, I knew I was going to run. I was making all my plans for my pep rally, rah-rah, get my friends there, we support Donna. And when that leaked draft of the Supreme Court decision that would overturn Roe versus Wade came out, I said, I cannot wait another day. Put all of that rah-rah pep rally aside, I need to make a statement and a stand right now. And one of the reasons I'm running is to support individual choice. And I don't want to get too partisan, but the Republicans will often say, we want smaller government, we want government out of your lives. Well, I think they want government out of business, but they're trying to put themselves in your bedroom, in your lives, in your personal, private decisions. And whether you believe that abortion should or should not be available, I think that's the woman's choice to make in consultation with her physician, and that the government should not be stepping in to say that. Just as I believe, that someone should be able to marry who they want to marry. Individuals should be able to get
Absolutely.
contraception without the government telling them they can't. And so those are all of the equal protection under the law reasons why I really want to go to Richmond. I would like to see Virginia constitutional amendments that will protect individual choice.
Comments coming in. We'll acknowledge the Times-Dispatch on the feed here. John Blair, attorney at Stanton, watching the program. This is from Gwendolyn. She has this for Supervisor Price. What is your strategy to instill more affordable housing in our community, similar to paying lower taxes for homes that are valued less?
Well,
What concrete steps are you taking? What are your thoughts on community-supported housing, such as small home communities for the homeless? What would you do to see this come to fruition?
Well, a lot of good ideas there, Gwendolyn, and Keith and I were talking this week, Neil and I this week, about a lot of these things. And one of them is that we have to have regulations that protect the environment. I don't think anyone is going to contest on that. The other thing is, as Gwendolyn just mentioned, we have to have all different kinds of housing because everyone has different needs. And that means we have to have temporary housing, short-term housing, rental, purchase, different sizes. We need to go away from the old style of residential zoning, which is detached single-family on fairly large lots that results in urban sprawl, and be able to build more dense, but with a variety. We just had a proposal come before us in front of the board, and what I loved about it was it had that full mix of housing, from detached single family to duplexes to multifamily to affordable units to I mean, and so that's what we have to do. And we have to have connectivity between the neighborhoods. We've had a couple where people have literally, and, give them credit for being candid, come and testified in front of the board and said, we support affordable housing, we just don't want it here. Or we don't want these people.
Literally use those words.
Literally those words. Or say, we don't want these people coming into our neighborhood. You'd rather the kids walk down a street that doesn't have a sidewalk rather than cut through your neighborhood. We cannot allow that. So a lot of the things that the county is already doing, going to a more form-based zoning is one thing, requiring multiple types of housing in a development. We had one last year that got approved where they eliminated one of the two styles of housing in it. I voted against that change because if you don't have all these different kinds of housing, missing middle, a lot of people don't understand it. I support it. And I support it within a community because it allows a young person moves in, they get a small place. Maybe it's an efficiency, a studio. They marry, they have kids, their family gets bigger. They don't want to leave their community though. So have houses that you can build up into as your family gets bigger, and then when you're back to being empty nesters or whatever, you can go back to a smaller unit and stay within that community. So these are all of the kinds of things that we have to do. We also have to have an affordable housing trust fund. I believe that the county should have one. It should be funded through a fee that comes from property transfers rather than an annual appropriation, because if you do an annual appropriation as your primary funding source, you're always going to be subject to this year's catastrophe. Look at what happened the last 2 years with the pandemic, how it affected the revenue flow for the county. So you do that. You do land trusts. You do donors. We look at what we're doing over at Southwood, which is a development. Let's be frank here. If Southwood had been inhabited by white people, it would never have been allowed to last as long as it did. But because it was mostly brown and black people, we allowed that development to continue far longer than it should. Now, one of the concerns was we didn't want to displace the people who were living there. But, I give all of the entities that are involved in redevelopment of Southwood credit for what could be a model that leads the nation, where you've got all of these different groups, the public-private partnership. None of these should be overlooked. No one size fits all. We've got to look at all of them.
Quentin, that's a lot. I'll let
That's a whole lot all at once.
I'll let you jump in.
I'm sorry, I don't do 8-second sound bites.
No, that was well said. That was dynamic.
You're totally
Well,
fine.
this is long format, so that's what this is supposed to be. So you're doing great.
So I feel like you've laid out what feels like a 4-year plan. Because there's so many steps from here to there and so many competing needs. There's a lot of things that seem very reasonable sitting from where I sit, that when I bring in other people, they're less reasonable because how it affects folks. We want to fix things, using Southwood as your example, but we want to do so in a way that doesn't displace people. When we add that requirement, it adds 3 steps. Each of those steps costs something. What's the first step? What, of all the steps that we want to take and all the places we want to go, we need to know what the first mile is. And what do you see as the first mile of that race?
I think the first mile is to always keep in mind the difference between the 7 virtues and the 7 vices.
Keep going.
Okay? Greed is one of the worst things in human nature. At the same time, we have to recognize that there is a cost associated with everything. Speaking recently with a developer who had a meeting with a government official, and when they went through the pro forma and saw that there was a profit built in, the government official said, we need to get rid of that profit. It's like, well, if you get rid of the profit, you got rid of the development. These are businesses. These are companies. They have to make money. So the first thing is...
And it's a funny thing, Don, I interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Nonprofits also have to make money.
Oh, they do.
So
It's just a different...
Because I chair a couple of them. So the
Right.
fact that it's nonprofit, that doesn't mean that that's just residual
Exactly.
income that they can use for some
For something else, yeah.
So I'm sorry to jump in.
And it's, no, thank you, Keith. And it's most simplistic. A corporation makes a profit that goes to the shareholders. A nonprofit makes a profit that goes back into doing
Sure.
their mission and everything. So if we start with that, and people really come to the table with honesty and candor, recognizing that there is a cost associated with everything. Housing affordability, Keith, I know you like to use that rather than affordable housing.
I prefer it.
Whichever term you want to use, every affordable unit has to be subsidized in some way.
That's
Otherwise, they're market value.
That is correct.
Okay? So the thing that always comes down is how much affordable housing can we afford to build? Because someone has to pay for that difference, that delta. It has to be filled in. That's where the county at the local level can do part of it. Nonprofits, are wealthy benefactors. We are blessed in Albemarle County in Central Virginia with literally thousands of very wealthy people who have the best interests of this community at heart. Last night I was at an event for one of the Rosenwald schools, St. John's Rosenwald School. Julius Rosenwald contributed about $5 million in the 1920s and 30s to help build 5,000 of these schools, mainly for African American individuals to go to school. This was back in segregation. There were 7 of them in Albemarle County. 2 are destroyed, 3 are residences, 2 are being rebuilt. But they need $500,000 in order to rebuild this building and keep it as a memory. We've got wealthy people in the community who are contributing to that because it's important for our heritage, and to remember that was in our lifetime. One of the women there last night, she was a student at that school, this 2-room school for black individuals. So what we have to do, we have to always keep community first. And we've got enough people who will do that.
So I know when the show is super successful.
My fingers are
his
burning
fingers
up.
are
A lot of questions
flying.
are coming in. They're flying.
And so we're going to let Jerry ask a bunch of questions. I've got notes all over the place, but we're going to let the viewer kind of guide where we're going to be going and the listener from this.
We're going to try to get to as many of these guys as possible that are coming in here. So one of the key points or questions or concerns coming up, certainly for midterms, certainly for your race, is inflation. Everyone is feeling pain at the pump, at the grocery store, with taxes. The dollar just not as going as far. This is a great question. What do you tell the farmers of the 55th? They are planting and all their costs are up. Gas cost is killing them, fertilizer cost is killing them, labor cost is killing them, supply chain costs are killing them. What messages do you send to the farmers? I'll add to that, what message do you send to all of us as voters that are feeling the pain?
Well, one of the things that has disturbed me for my entire life is to see the heads of corporations, the ones at the very top, raking in millions upon millions, hundreds of millions of dollars while they're not paying their employees a living wage and giving them benefits. So the first thing we've got to do is we have to change the tax code so that we actually tax the wealthy, that they pay their fair share. Now, we also have to acknowledge right now that a lot of what we're dealing with in the economy is driven by the consequences of the pandemic. Everything from workers being sick. This week, I think we have either just passed or we will pass 1 million verified dead from the COVID-19 pandemic. And that has affected everything in every logistics supply chain that there is out there. The government, the federal government, did a lot of good in helping to support the economy, but we're now seeing
This is the collateral damage.
The collateral damage is inflation. Because we've changed too rapidly. Most change needs to take place relatively, how do you eat the elephant a bite at a time? You got to do it progressively.
Don't tell my wife that.
Okay.
She's a lover of elephants.
Okay. Actually, elephants are my favorite animal, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But you have to do things somewhat slowly in most instances. But the other thing we've seen, and one of the reasons that employers are struggling to get workers, is the workers have been abused. I mean, they have been overworked, underpaid, underappreciated, and that's why I go back to collective bargaining.
Hold it, I work for my wife. I've got to take a note here for a second.
But when workers have an equal voice at the table, then there is going to be more fairness. And so I think those are some of the things. In terms of some of the things with inflation and going back to the farmers, agriculture is the largest industry in Virginia. I don't remember the exact figure, but it is the largest industry in Virginia. And agriculture covers everything. It covers the food you eat, the wood materials from the forestry industry. In our community, we have all these wineries, cideries. All of that comes from grapes and apples and all the other fruit and everything. So we have to do the things that help the farmers to be able to survive. Maybe there are some subsidies that the federal government needs to come out to farmers to reduce their fuel costs. Just the other day at the Farm Bureau event, I was talking to them, and they're talking about, and I couldn't even remember the exact figure, but how many dollars per day these farmers are going to be spending on diesel fuel in their tractors every single day, and it just blows your mind away. So we've got to get aid to the farmers themselves.
So I'll jump in here and I'll let Quentin kind of finish the train of thought. Last year, that was the statistic from Lisa Sturtevant, who's our Virginia Realtors chief economist. Doctor, excuse me. The number 2 GDP, I can get this right.
GDP.
Thank you.
GDP.
Thank you, Quentin. Save me
GDP.
here. Save me here, sir. Is our industry, the industry that we're in.
Is real estate.
Is real estate. Number 1 is government, actually. Producer of revenue into the state coffers is government. Number 2 is our industry. And at some point, I want to get back to my
Housing.
my housing end of it. And this is all great. This is awesome. But I know Jerry's got a ton of questions. But
Quentin, jump in here.
I do. We talk about things like inflation, and we have a long history with that, but we don't have a very repetitive history with dealing with inflation. And I wonder sometimes, everything I read says that getting out of inflation is probably going to suck.
Yeah.
Because
It's always sucked.
Because originally,
It's going to be a recession.
Originally, inflation was surrounded by COVID, which was something that was coming to an end. And we thought it was going to leave the room, and that once it left the table, we would see an acceleration of the economy again. And it has turned out to not be the case. There's other factors that are doing it. And if you go back in time, we got rid of the 14% inflation by shutting down the economy and trading that inflation percent for interest rates. And I wonder what it feels like to be an elected official where people often want simple solutions to complex problems. I've been asked on occasion, why don't you run for this? Why don't you run for that? I'm like, because I don't know that anybody would like what I had to say. Sometimes you have to go through the sucky part to get to something good on the other side.
We keep thinking that everything is going to be great and there's never going to be a problem in the world. And when we do that, we get complacent. And you've always got to think about short-term, intermediate, and long-term objectives and consequences. And so sometimes you've got to do something immediately. When Obama saved the auto industry, it wasn't just Ford and GM, that it was all the collateral businesses that were associated with that. And so too frequently, we only think short-term. What is this going to do for me today? And we forget about long-term. Back to housing.
That's a typical government failing.
It's typical failing everywhere.
It is, but I think extremism promotes it, because if you spend most of your
Absolutely.
time running to the right, and then you turn around and you run to the left,
You can't do
and
that.
then you turn around and you run to the right, you never move forward.
No.
Or it takes 30 times as long.
You're
So
absolutely right.
we have 3 business owners here at the table, and
4. She owns a
4.
business.
I apologize. 4.
Yeah.
My apologies.
She owns a
Don.
law firm.
My apologies. So I know on the business side, we're always doing 12, 36, 60-month business
have to.
plans, strategies, and planning. So we always are looking at that. On the government side, it's a little the problem with the government is you only can do this once a year because you can't project. You can't say, okay, well, we're going to build a better widget, and we're going to build this better widget, and this better widget should make us more money. So there is a little bit of hamstringing on the government side, but it does seem like, and I've been involved in this for 35 years, looking long term and budgeting long term and planning long term sometimes gets missed.
Actually, that's one of the advantages of the U.S. Senate, because they're 6-year terms and only 1/3 are elected every other year.
We have institutional memory.
You do. And it also makes it easier to maintain these longer-term plans where you have the House of Representatives where every other year the entire body is elected. And the swings of the mood of the electorate can ultimately end up causing exactly what you said, Keith. So
Well, we saw that this past November.
yes.
We
In-
saw
here
that
in
when
Virginia.
in Virginia.
Yeah. And so, but I want to get back to housing and affordability. Not everyone should own a home.
Absolutely.
I mean, everyone should be able to have the opportunity to try and acquire a home.
But this is a unique circumstance, and I'll let Quentin jump in on this because he's far more expertise on that. But rents are
Outpacing home ownership rates.
home ownership
Yeah.
increase.
I think
It's supply and demand.
everybody needs a place to call home.
Right.
And so we need all styles of housing.
Yep.
You need everything. I think you bring up an important point about the missing middle. I think putting varieties of housing in the same community prevents the creation of economically separated neighborhoods that then intrinsically separate people by race and class. And allowing that to exist in a single community is helpful. But you're correct. Not everybody is in a position to own a home. They still need a place to live.
Right.
Where that is affects transportation and taxes and government services.
Absolutely.
And so being able to accumulate infrastructure and people in a similar locality works really well, if you can make that happen. So I think if I was to pick the top two things that I'm going to worry about as a business owner and as a member of Central Virginia, inflation is going to be a problem, and how do we make sure people that are in fragile or brittle poverty don't completely fall over the edge? Secondly, if we don't have places for people to live, we're going to continue to stagnate the economy and the middle class.
And housing is the cornerstone of everything else.
It is.
Housing, jobs. If you don't have a place to live, you almost can't get a job.
So to put,
So you have to increase supply in order to reduce costs.
So young.
Yesterday, I'm sorry. I
No,
don't
go
mean to
ahead.
jump
No,
over
no,
you.
please, please.
Yesterday was Red Day for Keller Williams. Renew, energize,
I
donate.
think we have a photo.
It's a day of service. We have a photo.
Well, let's get that on screen if we could.
It's one of the things I love about the company. So yesterday, in 51 countries and every state across the nation, people of all stripes, ethnicities, and political backgrounds stopped doing real estate for a day to donate to a need in their local community that they chose themselves, and we took the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. You can see it on screen. This is from just one of our 3 sites, food we collected, and it mirrors what you were saying about public service. I believe when you help other people, you can get everything you need by helping other people get
Absolutely.
what they need. We were standing there setting up at this one site and putting up tents and the tables, and we started setting out signs, and one of the gentlemen that worked there came up and asked us what we were doing. We told him, and he kind of broke down a little bit, and he was thanking us for this, and he was saying that in spite of working this job full-time and another job full-time, he was still having to access the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank to put food on the table, and frequently was living out of his car.
Yep.
And this is somebody working 2 jobs, both full-time, minimum wage,
Yep.
but 2 jobs.
And
And he has no place to live.
And Millie Winstead was on the show 2 days ago, and she said the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank, to your point, can't even keep up with demand right now.
No.
No, they can't. Last year, they gave out 24 million meals, and across the country, food banks are the third rung in food provision. But last year, they were paying 6% per pound for produce through programs that they access. Today, that's 11 cents per pound, if you're thinking of how their costs were. And it was really touching to see people come together, but this is probably not going to get simpler for us in the short term. And so I am curious, how do we make housing, how does this guy find a place to live? He has family to stay with, but they're so far away from where the jobs are, with gas prices so high.
It erodes his margin.
He spends 5 or 6 nights a
Yeah.
week sleeping out of his car because
Yep.
he can't go back and forth, pay child support, and put food on the table.
Well, one of the things, and this does tie in with housing, so give me just a second. One of the
Yep.
things is increasing availability of health care so it's not tied directly to your employment. I was at Food Lion, and the cashier is talking to a customer, and he asks her if she's going to be at some event that night, and she says, no, I didn't get home from work till 1 o'clock, and I had to be here at 6 this morning to open the store. So he leaves, and I said, I'm sorry, you had to work here till 1 o'clock last night, and you had to be back at 6 o'clock this morning? She said, no, that was one of my other 2 jobs. She had to work 3 jobs, 50-something hours a week. She gave me the figure of each of the jobs. Now, try imagining balancing 3 different schedules each week
Sure.
with different employers.
And a household.
And a household. In
I
order-
can't even manage mine. I have an assistant.
in order to make enough money to support
I have
herself
multiple ones,
and
and I
get
can't.
health care. Because none of the employers gave her enough hours that she qualified there. So one of the things is we have to change that dynamic. When you do that, when everyone can get affordable health care not connected with their employment,
That is something really insidious that you
that then is one of the steps towards increasing, well, we have to increase the supply of housing. We have to increase the variety of housing. By doing that, we reduce the cost of housing. The other thing is, and some of these only work where you have a sufficient mass of people, but regular, reliable, and affordable public transportation. And one of the things Albemarle County is looking at is a variation of the on-demand using Jaunt to connect with CAT and Pantops in 29 North, which will help people have a better, more reliable, more efficient and faster aspect of public transportation. We're not going to be able to provide in the rural, rings of Albemarle County the same thing you can get in the city of Manhattan, but we
But
we
you
have
can't
to
afford
improve.
Manhattan.
No, yeah,
Right.
you couldn't afford there either. Okay.
A straightforward question here. Republican in the governor's mansion. Delegate, should you be elected, 2-year term?
Right.
How do we make an impact here?
Well, when I was speaking with Governor Youngkin 2 Fridays ago at the governor's mansion, I'm on the Virginia Council on Women, and we were up there for a reception recognizing about 20 young women with scholarships they have been granted. We were able to have a very warm interaction because not everything has to be partisan. This was a nonpartisan event. We were there to recognize young women going into the STEAM age, science, technology, engineering, math, healthcare, those areas. So by forming relationships that are not always yelling at each other, he and his wife, their gracious hospitality to us who were there, he knows who I am. He gets a briefing book. He knows that I'm the chair of the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors and I'm a Democrat. But the two of us, with his wife, we had a great conversation and made a connection there. And that's what you do. When I worked with Congress, the first thing they told me, other than just remember, your job is contingent every single day on what you do, was never take things personally. What you've got to look at is this issue right now. Where does that person stand? They may be your opponent on this issue today, but tomorrow they're your supporter. So never take it personally. Don't yell, don't scream, listen to what people have to say, act with dignity and
But
respect.
sometimes you learn, right?
And learn.
and
I
listen.
learn every conversation I have.
Sure.
So I would tell you right now, if I get elected, I have a beginning of a relationship with Governor Youngkin as a Democrat because he knows that I can serve the people of the Commonwealth without regard to party or partisanship.
So for me to sit here during the show and be quiet, that means this is an awesome show. And,
Yeah, for sure. This is an awesome show.
and
Also,
go-
you
We
heard
got
the
3
resume.
media outlets watching Supervisor Price here.
She's so much more qualified to talk to this than any of the rest of us. After you opened, I was just like, well, I'm going to
Incredibly dynamic.
Yeah. How's the coffee going? Coffee's going
We're working on it.
The chai's great, by the way.
Thank you. So this whole conversation up until this point was talking about how do we fix issues,
Right.
right? How do we fix issues? How do we fix, I'm a housing advocate, right? I'm a housing affordability advocate. And I'll probably get a little bit on my soapbox on regional housing partnership and some of the other things that you and I work together on and so forth and so on. But you know how we get stuff done?
We sit down, we talk.
We
and
have a relationship.
That's
We
exactly
establish a relationship. Well, you and I may or may not see eye to eye on something. I doubt it, but we may or may not see eye to eye on something. I respect you, you respect me. Let's get to the middle. Let's try to get something done. So I know there's I doing this to poor Judah, but there's an image I created about housing affordability that is supported by 4 pillars, right? And these 4 pillars are who we serve, right? This is the client, because I call them client.
Yep.
The private sector, which is Quentin and I, the builders, the developers, the nonprofits, which is Habitat, and the Piedmont Community Land Trust, which I'm a little partial to, and then the public sector, which is you, right? And we through these 4 pillars, I was doing some math on the way in. And first of all, I want to say thank you publicly. I did it at the Board of Supervisors. I want to do it again. Thank you for giving the Piedmont Community Land Trust, not you, but the board, $625,000. That's going to put 12 families by the end of this year into brand new homes. As a matter of fact, a little bit of news here, we're going to be adjusting the prices on Monday to $214,750. We got 12 of them coming up around at that point. The point is, that got there, that happened. We put 12 families in there. We, in a year and a half, have built over $7 million
Wow.
worth of homes, put 50%, 60% AMI. It was a lot of money, right? It was, about $800,000, $900,000
Yeah.
worth of money we had to range, including your 625. But it happened because of what we're doing right now.
And because of relationships. And I want to go back to that. I'm an Episcopalian, and in the Book of Common Prayer,
Oh, now we're done.
our baptismal covenant, which we repeat every time someone gets baptized, one of the things that we pledge is to respect the dignity and worth of every individual.
Sure.
And that's what relationships are about. It's about respecting
Well, that's just
someone's
human. That's
perspective.
just being human.
It is.
Right?
It's what
And
we're supposed to do.
That's what we had this conversation before we went on air, right?
Yeah.
You don't feel well, don't show up to a meeting, right? Your mama kind of taught you that.
Everything I needed to know in life, I learned in kindergarten, right?
Well, and some of us take 13 years to get to kindergarten. I just won't say who.
Why don't we highlight in your announcement speech, and do we know officially if Rob Bell's running?
I don't know.
We don't know. You highlighted in the speech that he was great, and these were your words, and I'm paraphrasing, great at communication, but not so much on execution or action.
Well, I phrase it this way. People will talk about, and first off, let me just say this. I think Rob Bell is a good and decent man.
Oh, without doubt.
He has treated me with dignity and respect. And so anything that I say is not about Rob Bell, the individual. It simply is a difference in where we are politically on things. One of the things Rob does very well, exceptionally well, maybe better than anyone, is constituent communications.
So I'm going to jump in. I'm in his district.
Okay. You're in my
Well,
district.
not anymore.
You're in my district, too.
Yeah, you're not, I don't think you are,
Well,
Keith,
'Cause
I don't
it's a
think
new
you are
district.
anymore.
so
There's only a small and help me here, only a small portion of Fluvanna.
Oh, only in the
55th.
town of Scottsville.
Yeah, you're not in
so
there
I'm
anymore,
not-
you're
Rob
out.
Bell's-
Oh,
I'm
you're out.
Yeah.
You're out.
It's a small portion of
I still
Fluvanna.
care
No,
about you,
this
even
is a
though you're
funny
not
thing.
one of my
I've got
constituents.
redistricted and gerrymandered now twice. Right, first time in the local, but anyway.
Small Fluvanna and small Nelson now.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
But I wanted to, just to speak to him for a moment.
Okay,
Right, and
sure.
speak to equal, right?
I believe that he is watching here.
So I will tell you, up until recently, since he's not in my district any longer, any life event that ever happened in my family,
oh, you get a letter.
I got a personal letter.
Yeah.
Signed by him, very specific. Daughter graduates.
Absolutely.
My youngest daughter is a former Division I athlete. She would
Absolutely.
place first in the
Rob
state.
She alluded to that in your announcement.
Yeah, Rob is great
I just
about
wanted
that.
I just wanted to put a authenticity to it because we received it.
Yeah, Rob Bell is a good and decent man. I mean, I will not say anything against Rob Bell, the individual. Politically, I'm in a very different place than him. Rob Bell proposed legislation which, if passed, would have allowed the Attorney General of Virginia to swoop in and take any criminal case away from our locally elected Commonwealth's Attorney, Jim Hingley. I believe that was a direct response to the actions that Mr. Hingley and several other Commonwealth attorneys in the Commonwealth of Virginia had taken for
Joe
criminal-
Plantania as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, for criminal justice reform. And if anyone has followed any of our actions at the Board of Supervisors, you have heard me repeatedly say that I believe there is an over-criminalization of minor misconduct. I was a prosecutor, a defense counsel, and a criminal trial judge. I am not a softie on crime, but I look at the difference between violent versus nonviolent crime, and many things that we make crimes end up having a lifetime of consequences when they could easily be handled as a civil or administrative matter. And also as for the poor, we have to stop making money the major way in which we
I
punish
was
poor
recently
people.
part of a grand jury, and I'll keep it very high level on that, but it was the defendants or the accused, coming before this was folks stealing TVs to buy drugs and so forth and so on. And I raised my hand and I asked the question, I said, where's the drug dealers?
Yeah.
Right? Hold it, time out. Why are we not prosecuting the
The other
drug
thing
dealers?
is, if in that situation, we have to look at cause and effect, cause and effect. Why did the crime take place? Because the person has a substance abuse issue. What do? We should be attacking the substance abuse issue. That's the underlying basis upon which that crime took place. So I don't want to have an attorney general in Richmond coming down here into Albemarle County where we elected our Commonwealth's attorney and taking cases away. That to me is not the way to do it.
So we've done this on Real Talk over the years, 3 some odd years in elections where we had 2 folks running against one another, sit here and have this long conversation. Would you be willing to do that if that ever?
Oh, of course,
Oh,
of
cool.
course. Now, the other thing is, one of the great things about military law is, as a judge, we were required to look at each offense and each offender, which is different than having sentencing guidelines, which the federal courts and many states courts use. Now, you always have to watch for abuses, but it allows you to take 2 individuals. We're just going to assume, I know neither of you would ever do anything, but we'll assume for a
Anymore.
moment that the 2 of you may have committed
Unless you've got video proof, and I think it's been doctored.
the same offense.
I'm talking about him, not me.
Okay? But if one of you has a history of misconduct and the other one doesn't, then we ought to look at that as a factor in how we determine what the punishment should be.
Well, military law and civil law and federal law is very different.
Well, not the crimes, though. If you're
Yeah.
talking about common law crimes,
Well.
I sent people away for decades who attempted armed robbery.
Sure.
So I'm not soft on crime, but I also don't, but in my law practice, I represent people who need access to classified information, security clearances. And anything in their life could impact their eligibility. And so what I look at is this whole person concept. And I think our laws need to be in such a way that we do that. But the other thing, I want to go back to the monetary aspect. If all we're doing is imposing fines and money on people, then what we're doing, particularly for the poor, is we
Yeah.
are simply putting them into an even more precarious position of losing their housing.
We're back to disparate impact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there must be justice.
So this from another voter, Dan Pettit. We love when you watch the show. With all the growth in the community, what conversations are the Board of Supervisors having to handle the transportation issues that are really becoming a problem now?
Well, we are working on that, and it's pretty complex here because we have different transportation systems. We have CAT, the Charlottesville Area Transit, and we also have JAUNT. And then one of the real complications is the different funding that they get, which allows them to provide different types of transportation. So I am glad that I don't have to keep track of which money comes in from which pot to do these things. One of the things we have to do is we have to, the county has this policy of 5% development area, 95% rural area. But we're starting to see, or we already are seeing, an imbalance into where that development area is taking place. So take, for example, the Samuel Miller District, which is geographically by far the largest of our 6 districts.
Jim Andrews District.
Jim Andrews. If you have 6 districts, mathematically, they should all be about 16% of your land mass. Rio and Jack Jewett, urban areas, very
But
compact.
doesn't it go by?
It goes by numbers,
Got it.
and so that's what I'm getting to. So the Samuel Miller District, one of 6, is probably somewhere around 30% of the land mass of the county, but it's still only 1/6 of the population. So I believe one of the things we have to start looking at is expanding part of the development area into that northern part of the Samuel Miller District, which then allows transportation to be more efficient. Jaunt can take care of people.
So Donna, for those, there's quite a few folks that are watching and listening that are not local.
Right.
So just try to give some landmarks of what that district.
Yeah, Samuel Miller District, if you take the county of
Southside Charlottesville.
Southwest. It's
Yeah.
the southwest
Thank
part
you.
of the
Yeah,
county.
thank you.
Very rural. All of the districts have a little bit of urban development and a little bit of rural, but this particular district is almost all rural, and that's making it very difficult for transportation. So if we can increase some of the development within the urban ring area in that northern part of Samuel Miller, which is the southwest corner of the city of Charlottesville, then we can have more efficient
So
transportation.
you are proposing and an advocate of increasing the 5%. Is
No,
that
no,
what-
I don't think we have to yet. There will come a time, no matter how efficient we are in developing the 5%,
I
there
think you're
will
closer
come.
to it than you think.
I believe we are. But I'm not necessarily saying today we have to expand it.
Got it.
But no matter how efficient we are, if our population continues to grow, which it does, we have to anticipate that there will come a time when the county will have to look to expand, because you can only either go out or up. And so we can do a little bit of both. But I also, Keith, I want to be very clear. I want to protect our rural environment.
of course.
Because why do people want to live in Albemarle County? Because of its beauty. We don't want to see
We have the same
sprawl.
struggle in Fluvanna County. It's the same conversation,
Yeah.
right? You know, there's urban portions of Fluvanna County, and then there's rural, and everybody agrees with that. But I'd really like to get
Come on, Quentin.
Quentin,
You've got something to say.
in.
Do you think the 5% keeps land prices high? Because developers are looking, and, Albemarle is a huge county.
It is
The city
clearly
is
a
built
factor.
out.
It is clearly a factor. And when you get into the rural area, then you've got to deal with a 21-acre, 31-acre, 2-acre development right.
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
Or lack thereof.
All of those things. All of these are factors. And what we have to do is a balance, recognizing that every action has a reaction, an equal and opposite reaction.
Well, that's the reason why I love
That's
this 4 pillars, right? Because if one of these
Right.
pillars are off.
And you have to stay in the center. I mean, I am a slightly leftist center principled pragmatist. I'm not on the extreme. I identify much more as a principled pragmatist than I do with any political
that.
party.
I like that. How about comments coming in from more voters?
Sure.
Renewable energy for the 55th. Any thoughts on that?
Well, we are seeing right now an expansion of solar farms. And we know that that is part of where everyone is looking to go. I kind of see solar farms probably as being an intermediate step towards energy efficiency, because as technology has improved, think about EVs, electric vehicles. When they first came out however many years ago, they had a range of up to, 60 miles. Now you're talking 300, 400 miles of range because technology improves. So right now, we still have to have more space in order to get the solar energy that we need, but we also have a lot of other environmental and
So let's tie
aesthetic
this back
concerns.
to the Dillon rule.
Is that going to be in the rural area or in the 5%?
There you go.
Well, you're not going to be able to put large solar farms
In the 5%.
In the 5%.
Yeah, that can't happen.
I think the large
It was
solar,
kind of a rhetorical question.
I think so, but I think the large solar farms are probably a short-term consideration, because as technology improves, right now I'm already seeing where EVs are being powered by solar panels on the cars themselves. If you can do that, you don't have to have the energy coming from somewhere else to charge the
So
vehicle
that's
up.
what Mr. and Mrs. Smith are working on.
Or in a wall in the garage? I mean, you can speak
Yeah.
firsthand to
Right.
this. You have one yourself.
I do, and one of my good friends and neighbors, they have 2 electric vehicles in their garage. Their garage has solar panels on the top. It powers their cars, and they pay $5 a month to Dominion as an access fee.
Yep.
And that's it.
And so that is where we're going. We're going more towards that. And the cost of that has come down dramatically over the last few years. Take anything. The initial production models that come out are generally not going to be as economically efficient as the existing alternative that they will be replacing.
For sure.
So cutting edge technology is usually the most expensive. You want to be a little bit behind cutting edge, but if you don't have cutting edge, you never make changes. This aspect of, well, if it ain't broken, don't fix it, that just leads you into mediocrity. We must always be looking for better ways to move forward. And so, whatever it is, there are ways to do it. I would like to go to solar out at my little place in the woods.
Yeah.
But for exactly the reasons that you said.
And just this week, California produced more energy from renewables than the state needed to run for a 24-hour period.
Yeah.
First time ever.
Yeah. So we're going there. We're going there. Now, what the steps are going to be, we'll just have to wait and see as the proposals come before us.
What are you most proud of with what you've done on the Board of Supervisors, and what, in hindsight, would you have liked to have done better?
Well, there are 2 or 3 things that I really take great pride in. A dear friend who I really respect told me, she said, "Donna, everywhere you go, you make it better than it was when you got there." Which really, it resonated with me. My favorite book to
Quite
read.
a compliment.
It really was. It really was. My favorite book that I would read to my children is Miss Rumphius, the Lupine Lady. Simple book. She traveled the world. She wanted to make it prettier than it was before. She planted lupines. And that's kind of my mission in life, to make things better. So I think I have brought none of this is done alone. You know, it takes a village to do everything, and so all the other supervisors and county staff have worked as well. But I believe I've helped bring a degree of professionalism and courtesy to our interactions that has simply gone another step higher than it was before I got there.
So Donna, leadership's a real thing, so providing leadership at the center of the table or the dais makes a difference. So what was your
You
biggest...
still got to answer the rest of the
Oh,
question
I'm sorry,
here.
my hearing aids kicked out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
In terms of, you know, one project, it's bringing a convenience center to Southern Albemarle. It may seem like a little thing, but I use myself as an example. I'm 45 minutes away from the IV Materials Utilization Center, AKA the dump.
The dump.
The transfer station. This is going to be a convenience center. It's going to be very much like the convenience center part of Ivy or the the McIntyre recycling, but with household garbage as well. 45 minutes for me to take my trash from my house to Ivy. I live a mile in the woods. There's no company that's going to come and get it. I can put it up by the road, and then the bears or the dogs will knock it over, and now you've got litter everywhere. 45 minutes there, 10, 15 minutes to drop it off, 45 minutes back. You know, you've just taken
At $5
2 hours.
a gallon, or almost
Yeah.
4.5
Yeah,
gallons.
you've just taken 2 hours of time just to get rid of your garbage. We're going to put a convenience center literally halfway between the town of Scottsville and the city of Charlottesville, right off of 20, which will be everyone in Southern Albemarle will have a place they can take their recycling and their household trash. No bulky items. It's going to be manned by an attendant when it's open. It's going to be a convenient place for people in Southern Albemarle who don't have or can't afford to have a service pick up their garbage. That is the one project that I would say I am extremely pleased to have brought that service to the residents of Southern Albemarle who feel like they have many ways been sort of left behind by the rest of the county. I don't think in reality they have been, but you know, there's perception and there's reality. But the biggest thing overall is, I believe, this sense of professionalism and courtesy back towards our interactions, both board to board, board member to board member, board to county staff, and county staff to our public. But the other thing is being responsive to my community members. They email me, I meet with them. Now, the pandemic made that a little difficult for a while, but I will meet with them where they are, hear what they have to say, and then take action to get an answer. It's not always the answer they would like to hear, but I'm very candid. I mean, I'll tell them. You know, someone proposed something the other day, and I said, I just got to be candid with you. I don't believe that a local manager should have the authority to sign contracts to rent county property. That needs to be at the county level. Yes, it adds a little layer of bureaucracy, but, you know, you can't have minor officials making major decisions.
Well, that's what happened in this project out in a surrounding county, that there was a minor official that's costing the project. So I've taken copious notes here.
Okay.
And we're almost
go
out
back
of
to
time.
housing.
So we're going to have to do this some other time. But one question I usually ask folks, elected officials during their first term.
Uh-huh.
What's your biggest surprise so far? What did you not know before you showed up, and what is your biggest surprise?
You know, so when I moved here, Memorial Day weekend, 2016, and was asked to run for the Board of Supervisors on the 15th of March, 2019. And I said I would do it. I then started attending every Board of Supervisors meeting from that day through today. I think I've missed one, maybe two, in
Wow.
3 years, really, because I'd started watching them back then. So I feel like I had sort of an OJT, on-job training. And Rick Randolph, my predecessor, who was an incredible mentor and really helped me to understand a lot of the processes. So I went into it, I think, with a good base of knowledge. Even with that, I had no idea how much time was involved in being a good supervisor.
How much time do you spend? A week.
I don't think you can put it into the normal kind of
I know I see
work
you
schedule.
more than a couple hours.
Yeah.
That's
Every night this week I had an event before the pandemic. So I started serving January 2020. And in mid-March, we went on the pandemic, lockdown. In those first 2 months, January and February, I averaged 19 nights a month of some sort of a meeting or gathering
But
with
isn't
people.
that also part of your commitment to be a good public servant?
It is. I'm not complaining.
Not to compare.
No, I'm not
But
complaining. I'm
somebody
just
else
saying
could probably sit in that seat and not pull 19 nights.
then I don't think they're doing their job.
I mean, we had Vice Mayor Juan Diego Wade on the show, and he said he spends about 18 hours a week
Yeah.
as vice mayor and city council.
So any elected official, somebody who's running for office, I have this very direct conversation with them.
Yeah.
If you're not going to budget 15 to 30 hours a week,
That's
Then-
not even close. That's not even
Do
close.
that.
And again, I'm not complaining.
No,
When I
no.
said that,
I mean, you
I'm
do
just saying,
everything commitment.
I had no idea how much time was involved.
so when I ask that question, it's usually one or both of these. Didn't realize how much time, and the budget process was much more in-depth than I thought it was going to be.
The budget process was fascinating, and we are really blessed with county staff. And let's talk about the budget. So, March of 2020, we are meeting in a conference room in Lane, county office building, talking about our budget, and the pandemic is coming on. County staff had just spent probably 6 months preparing a very in-depth budget for us. Within 2 or 3 weeks, they had to do an entirely new budget.
Sure.
I mean, you can't do that without incredible staff.
How large is your budget dollar-wise?
Well, right now it's $585 million.
That's a big budget.
That's a big budget. So,
That's 2x plus Charlottesville cities, to put that in perspective.
yeah. So in literally a matter of weeks, they came back with an entirely new budget. And in the next 2 years, we had no idea what the economy was going to be. Were we going to have the revenues? We cut our expenditures back dramatically. And under Jeff Richardson, our county executive, we went to a 336 for that fiscal year. Do the first 3 months, do the next 3 months, see where we are, do the last 6 months.
You guys did a great job.
I think so too. I really do. Now, there's some pain that went along with that. One of them was in the Navy, we'd call it gapped billets. When people left certain positions, we did not refill them.
Yeah.
And that meant we fell behind on getting some of our community development permit work and reviews and things like that. But now we're hiring staff
Yeah,
back
that was
up.
pretty substantial, though. There were months and months. And
It was
building permits.
yeah, it was a problem. I mean, we acknowledged that, but we did not know at the time what we were going to be able to afford. What if we had gone back into a 2008, 2009 Great Recession? So we have an obligation to provide services to our community, but that means we also have an obligation to be a viable government entity.
So this has been an awesome show because I didn't even get a chance to get to the hours of numbers that I did about housing. So we're going to have to save all this for a future show.
Why don't we close on this? You got a lot of people watching you here. Why should folks, the voters watching, vote Donna Price at the 55th?
Because what I will do is bring balance to government. I am committed to ensuring that I treat everyone with dignity and respect. I listen to everyone's viewpoint, and I use my moral compass to reach the decision. Most of what we deal with in government are better best decisions. Some of them are right-wrong decisions. Most of them are better best. The right-wrong decisions, my moral compass is going to drive me on those. They will guide and drive me. The better best decisions are the ones where, in the realm of legally permissible actions, any of them are legal. It's what is the decision that best provides what is needed by the most people? And I will listen to everyone. And, just give you a recent example, Dardentown Turf Fields,
Oh, I was going to ask you that.
all right?
Yeah.
When that came up...
3-3 split.
Yeah, when that came up initially, I was opposed to the artificial turf fields. And I met with the Don Long and other people about the fields, and I said, I'm just not there. By the end analysis, after all the facts had come in,
You changed.
I changed.
Yeah.
I listened, and I made what I think I believe is the right
That was the
decision.
right decision.
And
That was the right decision.
that brings up a whole topic that we need for another show about an odd board versus an even board. And this side of the table here is very much so in favor of 7. I was in favor
That's
of
not going to
7.
happen anytime soon.
No, it's not going to happen anytime soon. But the problem is that is now a no vote.
That's right.
So nothing is
Yeah.
happening.
Well, and you were so straightforward in that meeting. I respected you even more in that meeting. Supervisor Malik had some comments about environmental concerns with the turf field, and you said pretty much, "Come on, this is
It's 4 fields and
Yeah.
1 park.
right."
Yeah.
That's what you said.
It's not all of Albemarle County.
No, you have to balance everything.
Sure.
I mean, and so, do I prefer artificial turf? No. I would rather have natural grass. We don't have the acreage, and we don't have the money or the resources to be able to maintain
Exactly.
grass fields
Right.
at the level that we need.
And as Supervisor McKeel said, now we have mud pits, and I think she literally said goose poo in the meeting.
And that's
She
not
said that.
environmental either.
Yeah.
And even if we did, even if we had the $30,000 to $50,000 per field
Right.
to maintain them at the level of play that we could get from the artificial turf, you still can't play on them
Dude, I'm
after
gonna
it
give you some
rains.
props on that. Well said. Thank you. It seemed like it's just common sense. This is common sense here.
But see, that's the thing that's missing.
That's
though.
where you have to respect the views of the other people.
Things that you've said that I really like. When we're talking about judges, we're talking about mandatory minimums. The written law versus the spirit of it cannot always fill the gaps.
No.
You need a human that you trust.
Yeah.
And that ability to earn trust comes from sitting across somebody you disagree with and being able to respect them while you're sharing that disagreement.
Yeah.
Rob Schilling on WINA, I spend some time with him from now and again, and we probably disagree on 90% of political stuff across the realm, but I like the man, and it's okay to sit and disagree with him, and I've learned stuff, and I've had my mind
Oh, yeah.
changed. I like that you bring that forward, and because the way forward is somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
It's not all the way over here, and it's not all the way over here.
When I was a judge, I always reminded myself that justice without mercy is tyranny, and mercy without justice is anarchy. And you have to have that balance in there. And I try to guide
But the
all of
end
my
result
decisions.
of that vote is nothing.
That's right. But that's a
Nothing-
different question.
understand that.
That is
The
a
odd
different
number
question.
versus even number, and I am much more open and receptive to that today than I was before that vote.
Some would say that is good government, though.
Yeah.
Because it took 3 to persuade another 3 to make this happen, and that's action.
So the process worked to a certain degree, right?
Some would say that.
Yeah, so the process worked to a certain degree.
It was a
'cause-
failure.
I thought it was a failure. And
well-
the people my kid plays there. So we have soccer practice, we play soccer games there. And he and his team, literally this weekend, Saturday, we will be there. It is a mud pit
Yep.
that he's playing
And
on.
if that wasn't the case, and if it was turf fields and this money was spent, maybe there's incremental income to be made to bring in some tournaments
Yeah.
that won't come because of that. Hey, look, I'm rather one-sided on this. I've never thought an even board made any
No.
sense.
And my biggest issue with it goes back, this is a military doctrine. The only thing worse than a bad decision is no
No
decision.
decision at all. I will say there is a positive about an even board, and that is that it does generally require more consensus.
That's right.
And it avoids the situation of a small majority always.
But does it really, Donna? I'm
That's-
sorry, I'm going to get on a soapbox
Yeah,
on
we're-
this. Does it really, right? Because the no side of whatever the vote is always has an extra vote. They always have an extra vote. So they have 4,
Yep.
right? So they don't really have to come to the table.
But what I don't want to see would be a 7th seat that's at large.
No,
I would not want to see a 7th seat at large.
And if we had at-large one of the other things to remember is Albemarle County and Prince William County are the only 2 counties in the Commonwealth of Virginia that have a county executive form of government. And
That's
people don't
exactly right.
realize that.
Yeah, exactly right.
Different counties, different governments.
That's exactly
Under a county executive form of government, if we have an at-large, that person is automatically the chair. And one of the advantages we have in Albemarle County is that every year we elect a chair, which means that we are not stuck with a bad chair for 4 years were that to happen.
We started the show Navy Marine Corps, so I got to keep simple things because I'm a Marine, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm just talking math. And one of the arguments against going to an odd setup,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is it only really affects land use.
No,
That
it
was
affects
said-
everything.
That was said quite often.
Mm-hmm.
This is a situation that it affects a non-land use scenario
Yeah.
where nothing is happening. Jerry's wonderful little son is going to be playing in mud.
Yep.
Literally.
Literally in
Hey,
mud.
All-state soccer,
Does he hate it
state
that much, though?
championship.
I mean, mom and dad do.
Coached
And-
it for years.
Yeah.
But I will say this, though. In now almost 2.5 years on the board, I think there have been 4 tie votes, 3 on land use, this
Yeah.
one. And that's not a bad record for Albemarle County. I'm really
Well, it's
disappointed in
dependent on
this
who's
outcome.
sitting in those seats,
Well,
obviously.
well, the other 3 were all deferrals, and 2 of the 3, I believe, came back. The third one came back by a different applicant and was approved. So at this point, this is the only,
This issue.
this one issue,
Darden
the
Town.
Fields. That's the
Yeah.
only one that we have not reached a resolution on. And I'm very disappointed, and I'll just leave it right there. I'm very disappointed in that outcome.
Well said. That's the show.
Yeah, man.
This show was dynamite. You were awesome.
Oh, thanks. It was
Seriously.
fun. This
It
was great.
Awesome.
I'm never this quiet.
11:40.
That makes
She
2
is
of us.
awesome. This is Real Talk, guys, on the I Love Seville Network, presented by Yes Realty Partners and Keller Williams Alliance. Donna Price in the 55th just, I think, crushed it. Over 90 minutes of long-form content right here. The show will be archived at realtalkwithkeithsmith.com, of course on iloveseville.com as well. We should applaud Judah Wickower, our director, and that's the program.
Round of applause.
Guys, we are up in 50 minutes with Kerry Rock of Do Good Seville, talking some of the nonprofit work he's doing around Central Virginia. Thank you kindly for joining us. Have a good morning and a good weekend. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you,
That was
Tom.
fun.
That was fun.
Bring me back.
We will. We'll invite whoever your competitor
Now that
may
I'm
be.
Keith Smith.